Greetings, everybody out there in internet land. My name is Troy Bernier, and this is the Miami International Science Fiction Film Festival. And we have an interview here with a Mr. Jeff Carroll, director of the documentary called Why I Love Sci-Fi. It's a critical look at science fiction through the eyes of a creator. So let's bring on Mr. Jeff Carroll. Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
All right, I'm doing real good. How's everything, Troy?
Fabulous, doing fabulous, man. Doing fabulous, brother. It's good to see you. Good to see that you're still at it. And you've got this documentary, which is going to be playing at MiSciFi next weekend. And
Yes.
we're real interested to hear more about you who has been a creator of fantastical content in South Florida for quite a many years, about two generations, two decades, if I'm right.
Absolutely. I've been trying to hold it down, through horror, making horror, and now comic books are really excelling for me. So between comic books, film, and novels, I'm got my hands full.
Uh-oh. So, folks, we got a person here, Jeff Carroll here, who has been a career creator for quite some time. And understand that it not necessarily is his full-time job, but what's so smart about what he does is that instead of, just going and hanging out at whatever, you're using a good chunk of your spare time in your universe, creating your content, writing your books, going to cons, comic cons, and all over the Southeast. If I'm right, you drive all over the Southeast. The cons, if you could get there in 12 hours or less, you're there for the weekend, putting on a show for your content. Am I right?
Exactly. I mean, I guess the way I look at it is I tell people I'm writing all the time. So whether I am physically sitting down writing a story or I am driving, or like I do in my documentary, when I'm cutting my grass, that's when I do many of my problem solving.
And if I'm right, we actually interrupted some of that grass cutting today.
Yes,
you
yes.
got called in for an interview.
Yes, man. South Florida, you got cut grass 12 months of the year.
That's right. That's right. So tell us a little bit about the doc. It's really a perspective of you and your take on science fiction. So what was the inspiration behind this, and what does the doc go into?
Well, a few years ago, I started doing a video podcast in this studio that I call my car, and I had a drive to work that was about an hour to work and an hour home. And I would listen to radios and audio tapes, and I started doing this video blog, and my comments I were using as extensions of conversations that I would have at film festivals, comic conventions, book fairs, and I would expand or clarify a point or share a new idea that came through casual conversation, or for what is it, almost 10 years, maybe 13 years, I've been doing the Monster Panel. And the Monster Panel, Troy, you were on it. We had other sci-fi creators, and I took it as far as New Jersey and New York City. And I would do panels with different creators wherever I went, and we would talk about science fiction. Yeah. And for a year, I did the same topic at every convention that I go to. Why do we love sci-fi? And that just became the moniker. And I was like, well, let me get on my soapbox, because it reminded me of like a State of the Union address, where I was saying, let's stop and talk to a creator. And what better creator than myself? And I was like, that's low budget. I like me, and whether my opinions are right or wrong, I want to footnote them in this moment in Black science fiction history, or really, it's really just a moment in science fiction history, because Black science fiction is no different than any other ethnic group. We all approach science fiction. And black science fiction is just one thing. And my documentary is, yes, of a black creator, but it's not limited to black anything, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
talk about a global disaster. There's no such thing as a black global disaster. It's a
right.
global disaster. So,
Everybody's included in it. Well,
right.
and I could definitely concur with anyone who's been to Jeff Carroll's Monster panels. They are like going to 4th of July and experiencing fireworks. It gets quite hot in there, and
Yes.
quite colorful, and you know, so the topics are always strong. There are always a lot of strong opinions. It's a very good environment for discourse and discussion. Highly recommended. So,
And it's really what, go ahead.
so you know, you already told us how you made it. It's inside your studio, which is your vehicle there.
Yes,
During
this
your
is just
transit.
one set. This is
Yeah,
where the idea came from,
yeah.
but this is just one set.
So, in what ways do you hope your documentary will influence or impact the viewers? You know, what's their takeaway from it? What do you think that's going to be?
Well, I guess one thing is as a starting out creator, I was, especially living here in Miami, all I knew was Octavia Butler, L.A. Banks, Stephen Barnes, Samuel Delaney. At the time I started writing and creating horror and science fiction, I had never had or listened to an intimate conversation with one of these creators. And I think I just read an article with Octavia Butler and how she got tired of hearing the same question over and over as a black creator. And it never allowed her interviews, never allowed her to talk like, Gene Roddenberry or Asimov Asimov,
Isaac Asimov. Yeah.
Isaac, I'm sorry. When I say it together, it throws it. But, these guys who were able to talk about Robert Heinlein, who were able to talk about the science in their science fiction. She was only interviewed as a woman, as a writer. How did you get into it? Nobody asked Robert Heinlein that. They were asking him about life on Mars. They were asking him about the deep science of his stories. And I kind of wanted to provide a in-depth, ask me anything, look at somebody like me for somebody like me when I first started. And also for people who are the casual science fiction fan, right? And I talk about this, like the black and brown communities, they're emerging into science fiction, and there are since Black Panther, there's been a birth, but Black Panther was like, oh my God, look at the black people. They got flying ships, you know what I'm saying? Right. And for those casual people, I want them to get an introduction into science fiction too, because we still see people to this day say, oh, I don't really know what science fiction is. I don't watch it. I don't, I'm not engaged. And I tell people all the time, you already are science fiction.
It's interesting you bring this up, because in the festival this year, we are recognizing the increasing number of films that are coming from parts of the world that have never made science fiction.
Right.
And we actually have a panel on it called Enlightenment on the Silk Road. And what kicked it off, really, me producing this, we received 2 films that blew my mind away. One is from Kazakhstan, a sci-fi from Kazakhstan, and a sci-fi from Malaysia. Doesn't happen, bud. So, we're, and, amongst other countries that we've yet received films, no one's seen films from these countries before. We have,
you was talking about the South African guy.
Yeah, we had one from South Africa. We got one from Kenya. Actually, the brother from Kenya, he is going to be at the festival. His film was Katambo 5 years ago.
Wow.
That's when we first produced the Afrofuturism session. Nobody was doing it back then.
Right.
Okay? And This guy flies in from Kenya and wins the award for best Afrofuturism. He's going to be at the festival this year on that panel.
Wow.
Yes. Will, that's Willis, and
See,
he's the
now you
director.
got me jealous because I want to be on the panel.
Yeah. You want to be we're gonna try to, and it's being held early enough in the day where the guy from Kazakhstan could be in on it via wireless. We're gonna chime in via wireless to be part of that. That's why we're doing that. But also at the same time, if you can't make it, we're gonna also have a virtual panel on this as well, so we can bring a few others, because we have some content from Argentina, we have some content from Colombia. We got a feature film from Colombia that's going to pick up awards. I can tell you that right now. It's amazing. There's this film. It's an animation, a feature animation film. It's Oscar award winning, as well as a couple other countries. We have one from Turkey. Turkey don't make science fiction. This one, it's going to pick up awards like crazy. It's the quality of this film. So wow. So going back to you here, can you share an unexpected or memorable moment that left a lasting impression on you from the production of this doc?
Okay, so I use mostly organic locations, but I shot a scene in my comic book store that I go to, and my son shot part of it for me. And at the time, the gentleman who worked at the comic book store was the same age as my son. And I did not realize it until shooting the film that I have been dialoguing with somebody who's the same age as my son, going through the same things, and we're having a multi-generational conversation. And it mirrors some of the stuff that I had with my son, but he's away at college, so he was just home for that time. And I said, all right, I'm going to the comic book store. And, he's a sci-fi guy, but he more so reads books. He's not the comics as much as I am, maybe it's just a phase, because I went through a period in my 20s where I wasn't big on comic books, but that was kind of it. And then the gentleman at the comic book store had a film, and he was he did a documentary his senior year in college, and it was on why people like comic books. And we met talking about shooting our documentaries at the same time at a comic book store. He worked there and I was a patron, and it was like beautiful. So we have been doing conventions together. I've been showing the excerpt from my film. He's been showing his is only 15 minutes. So he gets his whole film in the panel. And it's this beautiful multi-generational thing that is a documentary of its own. Two documentary filmmakers meet at a comic book store shooting their films. That's cool. Crazy.
That's pretty cool. Well, I'd like to, since we are pressed on a heck of a lot of time, but I'd like to do, I need to ask you about 3 or 4 more questions, but I'd like to also show the trailer. So let's go.
Let's go.
Welcome. This is Jeff Carroll, pioneering science fiction writer, comic book creator, and filmmaker. And it's my pleasure to present my first documentary, Why I Love Sci-Fi. This documentary is a product of years of me wearing my I Love Sci-Fi t-shirt and having to explain to people what science fiction is and just talk to them about science fiction in general. In the documentary, I'm going to explain what science fiction is, what Black science fiction is, some of the challenges that creators like myself and the genre in whole have confront, and then also going to talk about where I think science fiction is going and where Black science fiction is going. You'll also get a behind-the-scenes look at me as a creator, the things that I do, motives behind the things that I write, and just a little inside look at me. The film was actually shot 100% on my cell phone, so get ready. If you don't know what science fiction is, you only had ideas, you just watch comic book movies, you like Dune or whatever. So get a hold of yourself, have a seat, and enjoy why I love sci-fi.
Well, there has it.
I'm wearing the shirt and everything, right?
Yeah, when you come to the festival, make sure you bring a couple of those so folks can buy them, because I guarantee people gonna buy those up.
I got them in the back.
Awesome. Real quick, couple questions we have here. So looking forward, are there any genres, roles, or types of projects that you're particularly eager to explore?
Well, I have shameless plug, but I have my comic book. It's set in the post-apocalyptic world called The Last Harlemite, and that's coming to comic book stores this summer. And I've always wanted to do something in the post-apocalypse. I've written about it in my novels. I've got this comic book out, and I would love to shoot something in the post-apocalyptic setting. That's one. And then I just want to do science fiction in general on film. Mm-hmm. My movies have been dominated by horror because I can do that low budget. And I got carried away with writing screenplays that were horror. But I have some science fiction films. I would like to do something set on another planet, set out in space. So that's something that I would like to do. And I have some short stories that I feel can represent that, you know, and it may be part live action, part animation. So I don't know.
That would be neat. I can tell you there have been a couple films at MiSciFi which have combined animation and live action, and they were very successful with it. We could probably look up some of those and discuss them in the future. I'd be happy to highlight that. But yeah, there's some that have been done very well, very, very well. With that said, how do you view the evolution of film and storytelling with the advent of new technologies and platforms?
Man, well, I was just talking to a photographer friend of mine about how technology has impacted everything. And one aspect is, of course, is CGI and making things easier to do the unimaginable or the hard to portray, easier to portray. We don't have to do claymation anymore. But in addition, because technology has made things easier to afford to do, like we were talking about hit film, you know, I learned how to edit using a free program on the internet. You know, I'm able to work with illustrators all around the world because they can email me on Facebook and deliver me a high resolution image, you know, and I can take that to a printer that I can email it to, and I never have to leave my house, you know, and that accessibility, I think, is the greatest impact of technology. I love the CGI and I love the big things that it does, but what it did for the little guy, it eliminated the gatekeepers. We would not have black sci-fi any form, whether it's literature, comic books, or film, if it was up to the big studios or the big publishers. It's because of the indies' accessibility to the market. Number one, through Kickstarter, right? Crowdfunding. I have 13 comics funded through Kickstarter. That is money that I would have never been able to get. The first time I got paid and saw profit on a comic book was after I ran a Kickstarter campaign. I made enough money to pay my illustrator for the printing and pay myself as a writer.
Yeah, for the time served. Yep.
Yes. Yep. So to me, that's what technology has done.
And to add to that, I could tell you, being a director of this festival for going on for now over 11 years, there's no way we would have the hundreds of films we get every year if it wasn't for the fact that there's Final Draft. And of course,
Right.
Final Draft do realize that, yes, they are a sponsor, but I'm going to mention them because without a story, without the ability to put a story together so quickly and efficiently, you wouldn't go,
Right.
make anything. So that's the foundation block right there. In addition, Red Giant, the plugins and services that they produce and new blue effects that
Right.
they produced, and now you have Backstage, which you have your entire casting director encapsulated in Backstage that brings you content people from all over the world that you can now announce that, hey, I'm making this movie. It's going to be here at this time at this place. I'll pay you. Bam! You got the whole thing wrapped up. And the festival used Backstage 2 years ago to get its screenplay performers. So
Wow.
without having these tools at our fingertips, we wouldn't have any of the stuff that we have today. And I think as a result of it, science fiction has just gone above and beyond and has produced this new golden age that we're living through today because of access for all these tools that are educating and providing confidence in all these creators worldwide. Isn't it beautiful?
I was just telling somebody about the Comics Gate and the backlash to the Hugo Award, and how the old establishment writers were trying to block female writers and writers of color. Now, because of technology, we got guys selling books and stories outside of the Hugo Award. We got black people that, chief editor of old science fiction magazines that would have never, even published black stories before.
Yeah.
So,
the festival, MiSciFi, was in China during the conference over there. So we can't go into all the details when there's not enough time. I'm not trying to push folks away from having that conversation, but there's just not enough time. We want to give Jeff as much time as we can right now, but we will come to that discussion. The last thing I want to add is I think you would have made a great character in The Expanse.
Thank you very much.
Expanse. It's a ripoff of Planet X, but that's another story. They did a really good job with it.
Right.
However, but do you see yourself more as a Star Trek fan or a Star Wars fan, or are you both?
Wow, I like to say I'm a fan of kind of The Expanse, right? If there was a middle, but there's elements I like about both, right? The fantasy of Star Wars gets a little too carried away, but the unlimited stories that universe produces is undeniable. Whether it's going back and fixing things like they did with Rogue One and how they built the Death Star, to going on and continually to expand the universe like they're doing with Discovery. And not Discovery, with Ahsoka and this new one that they have coming out. It's like they have it's like they have endless stories, and the way they do it in video games, I'm loving it, because I still credit the Force the Force Awakens with the video game that they had, but that came out before The Force Unleashed. So like all of those stories are unique and tied into their universe now, and they're the ones that really came up with the multiverses, the expanded universe. Marvel and them copied what Star Wars did, but then the space exploration, hands down, that's Star Trek. The science in speculating what is a nebula, we know that word because of Star Trek.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
I just used a nebula in one of my stories, but that's because I'm a Star Trek fan.
But don't forget the number one that pushed the bar over the hoop, and that was Andor. It just took everything and said, we're gonna make it all better. And and gave the 501 exactly what they've been playing. It's given them the empire in such a palatable way.
Right. It's like what you were saying. We were talking earlier, and I hate to say it, but we were talking about Haiti, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way Star Wars is a war, right?
Yeah, it is.
And what they've shown us is there are multiple perspectives in a war.
Yes.
The clones' perspective was overlooked for decades.
Right.
But now we're getting to see, we thought it was all about the Jedi and the Sith and the Empire, but we forgot about, they may make a Star Wars story based on one of the other alien species.
Yeah. I think Acolyte touches on some of that. I think the Acolyte touches on it. But before we deviate too far from Andor,
and one more thing I was going to say, have you watched Halo?
Not yet. After the festival, I got a lot of catching up to do.
But Halo is there.
What I was going to say with Andor, remember, you are one of the Lecto Sapiente Award winners of last year.
Yes.
Okay, a lover of wisdom. Okay, you're spreading wisdom. We also had Dr. George Gonzalez, who was one. And for the first time, we recognized somebody who's actually a YouTube influencer. Which is Sean Rogers, who gave his thesis. It was a thesis on why Star Wars is a masterpiece. Andor is a Star Wars masterpiece from 1978. And to this day, the thing's already now at 1 million views. To this day, it's just we're probably going to show it again. we're going to probably show it again. It's so damn good.
So in the conversation, we brought in Expanse, right?
Yeah.
I think when it talks about universes, you might want to forget Ender's Game. You might want to forget Starship Troopers, but the Foundation, I don't know how that fits in there, right? But that's an honorable mention. And then, of course, Halo. To me, Halo is a cross between Star Wars and The Expanse.
They took it there. They took it there.
Yes. And I'm waiting to see how they're remixing Dune, because Dune is not like the first movie, and it's not really much. It's not exactly like the books either. So this new Dune that just came out last month or this month, that's in the conversation, because they bring something else to the multiplanetary space worlds. So we'll see. But we got to talk about that.
Okay. Well, listen, we covered everything. I really appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing you next week at the festival.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Troy. And thank you for doing what you do with your festival. This is a journey in itself. And I mean, you're like an authority now, dude. You used to be the science man, but now you're science fiction film man. So that's beautiful.
It's been a journey. It's been a lot of fun. So many people have been impacted by the thousands. It's actually at the thousands now. The number of people worldwide who have been impacted. I'm not talking about attendees. I'm talking about filmmakers, creators.
Okay.
Over 1,000 people worldwide. This festival has impacted. So, it's like, wow. And of course, I'd be willing to do an interview. It'd probably end up being one of those 3-hour ones that Shay and the artist is the voice of a CEO, or some of those good long. It's definitely a 3-hour long interview, minimum, maybe. Because I can talk for 5 hours standing up. That's no problem.
Well, you need a good interviewer like me. You need a good interviewer like me.
How about that? Let's see.
All right.
Now.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Bye for now.
All right.